The chamber fell silent as the chair raised a clawed wing, signaling the beginning of the session. Humanity, it began, its voice echoing in a synthetic translation that carried a tone of cold authority. Your species has proven itself to be a destabilizing force in this galaxy. You have expanded recklessly, defied established protocols, and disrupted the balance we have maintained for millennia. Today, you stand at the precipice of annihilation. The hologram of Commander Ronald Drayton flickered to life at the far end of the chamber, a lone human facing a sea of alien hostility. Drayton, dressed in the sleek black uniform of the United Earth Defense Initiative, radiated a calm confidence that bordered on defiance. His sharp features were set in an unreadable expression, but his piercing blue eyes scanned the room with an intensity that made more than a few alien delegates shift uncomfortably. "You call it destabilization," Drayton said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "We call it survival. Humanity didn't ask to join your little galactic club. You forced that decision when your ships appeared in our skies." A ripple of discontent spread through the chamber. The insectoid delegate from the Zarn Collective clicked its mandibles furiously. "Your species is reckless. You strip mine planets, weaponize technology beyond your comprehension, and expand without regard for territorial agreements. You are a threat to all civilized life." Drayton tilted his head slightly, a hint of a smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "Civilized? That's rich. Coming from a species that devours its own offspring to survive lean seasons." The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, their translated voices creating a cacophony of outrage. The council chair slammed its wing against the floor, sending a sharp, metallic clang reverberating through the room. Silence returned, but the tension was palpable. "The ultimatum is non-negotiable," the chair said, its voice colder than before. "Humanity will dismantle its military-industrial complex, cede control of its outer colonies, and submit to the oversight of the Galactic Council. Refusal will result in your immediate extermination." Drayton's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of calculated seriousness. He took a step forward, his holographic image projecting confidence and strength despite the hostile environment. "You think you can intimidate us into submission? You've clearly misunderstood who we are." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the weight of impending conflict. Drayton let the moment stretch, his gaze sweeping across the room. When he spoke again, his voice was steady, but it carried a fierce undertone that could not be ignored. "We've faced extinction before. Natural disasters, wars, plagues. We've stared death in the face more times than I can count. And every time, we've come out stronger. You think your ultimatum will scare us? It doesn't. It only proves how little you understand about humanity." The reptilian delegate from the Zora Dominion hissed, its forked tongue flickering. "Arrogance. You speak as though you are invincible. You are but a child playing with fire in a galaxy of titans." Drayton's smirk returned, sharper this time. "Maybe, but if we're children, then you're about to find out just how dangerous we can be when backed into a corner." A faint chuckle escaped the gelatinous delegate from the Varl Consortium, a sound like bubbling water. "Bold words, human. But words will not save your species." Drayton ignored the comment, his focus fixed on the chair. "You've delivered your ultimatum. Now let me deliver humanity's response." The chair tilted its head, curiosity flickering in its golden eyes. "And what is your response, Commander?" Drayton's expression hardened, his voice ringing with defiance. "Is that all you've got?" The chamber fell into stunned silence. For a moment, it seemed as though the very air had been sucked out of the room. Then, slowly, the murmurs began. Quiet at first, then growing louder as the alien delegates processed the audacity of the human's words. The council chair's feathers ruffled, a visible sign of agitation. "You mock us?" "No," Drayton said evenly. "I'm challenging you. If you think you can break humanity, go ahead and try. But don't expect us to go quietly." The chair's talons clenched, scratching deep grooves into the metal floor. You are condemning your species to annihilation. Drayden took a step closer to the projection's edge, his image towering over the assembled delegates. No, I'm giving us a fighting chance. And if you're as wise and powerful as you claim to be, you'll think twice before you underestimate us. With that, the hologram flickered and vanished, leaving the chamber in silence once more. The alien delegates exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence now tinged with doubt. The chair remained motionless, its golden eyes fixed on the spot where Drayton's image had stood. Far away, aboard the UEGI command ship Eaglet, Ronald Drayton leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Around him, his officers watched in silence, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Sir," said Admiral Theo Carter, his voice low but steady, "do you think they'll follow through on their threats?" Drayton turned to face him, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "They will, but they've made one critical mistake." Carter raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "They gave us time to prepare." Drayton stood, his commanding presence filling the room. "Get the word out. We mobilize immediately. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." As the officers snapped to attention and began issuing orders, Drayton stared out the viewport at the stars beyond. His jaw tightened, his mind already racing with strategies and contingencies. The Galactic Council thought humanity was a threat. They had no idea how right they were. The war room aboard the Eaglet was a hive of activity. Holographic displays floated above the central table, projecting a complex web of star charts, fleet formations, and resource assessments. The air was thick with tension, the kind that settled in the marrow of men who knew the stakes of the decisions they were about to make. Commander Ronald Drayton stood at the head of the table, his sharp gaze scanning the room as he waited for the assembled leaders to quiet. He didn't need to call for silence. His presence alone commanded it. General Ivan Reyes, a towering figure with a scar that ran jaggedly across his temple, leaned against the table's edge. His uniform was unkempt, a testament to his preference for action over appearances. "Let's not sugarcoat it," Reyes said, his gravelly voice breaking the silence. "We're outgunned, outnumbered, and out of time. The Council's fleet will be here within weeks, and we're still patching up holes in our orbital defenses." Dr. Victor Lane, the chief scientist of the UEDI, adjusted his glasses with a measured calm that belied the urgency of the situation. "True, General, but humanity has never won by playing fair. We innovate, adapt, and outthink our enemies. That's what we've always done, and it's what we'll do now." Reyes snorted. "Easy for you to say from the safety of your lab. The rest of us will be out there fighting tooth and nail while you're tinkering with toys." "Toys?" Lane shot back, his voice tinged with irritation. "You mean the experimental railguns that just doubled your ground artillery's range? Or perhaps the AI targeting systems that saved your soldiers' lives on Titan?" Drayton raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Enough. We don't have time for this. Victor, what's the status of Project Valkyrie?" Lane straightened, his irritation replaced by the focused energy of a man consumed by his work. "Valkyrie is operational, but it's untested. If it works as intended, it'll give us the edge we need. If not," he hesitated, the unspoken risk hanging heavy in the air. Admiral Theo Carter, seated to Drayton's right, leaned forward. His silver hair and weathered face spoke of decades of experience, yet his sharp eyes burned with undiminished intensity. "Risk is all we've got," he said. "The Council's fleet will be deploying weapons we've never faced before. Valkyrie might be our only chance to level the playing field." Drayton nodded, his mind already racing through the possibilities. "Then we move forward. Theo, I want a full report on fleet readiness by tomorrow." Reyes, prioritize securing the outer colonies. If the Council tries to cut off our supply lines, we'll need every resource we can muster. Victor, double your testing on Valkyrie. We'll deploy it when and only when it's ready. The three men acknowledged the orders without hesitation, their respect for Drayton evident in their swift compliance. But as they moved to leave, Drayton spoke again, his voice softer yet no less commanding. "And one more thing. We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for what humanity represents. Don't forget that." Reyes paused, his hand hovering over the door panel. He turned back, his usual gruffness tempered by something more reflective. "What humanity represents. Hope, right?" Drayton met his gaze, a faint smile breaking through his otherwise serious demeanor. Hope and the stubborn refusal to bow. The war room emptied, leaving Drayton alone with his thoughts. He stared at the holographic display, watching the simulated movements of enemy fleets encroach on Sol's borders. For a moment, the weight of it all pressed down on him. Billions of lives depending on the decisions he made in the coming days. But he pushed the doubt aside. There was no room for hesitation, not now. In the weeks that followed, humanity mobilized with a determination born of desperation. Shipyards worked around the clock, churning out destroyers and cruisers at a rate that pushed the limits of human endurance. Engineers retrofitted aging vessels with cutting-edge weapons, while soldiers trained tirelessly for the battles to come. Across Earth and its colonies, a palpable sense of unity took hold, the kind that only came when survival was on the line. On the ground, General Reyes drilled his troops with relentless vigor. The man was a force of nature, barking orders and driving his soldiers to their limits. Yet he wasn't without compassion. In the quiet moments, he'd share a laugh with his men, his gruff exterior softening as he reminded them why they fought. "They think they can crush us," he said during one such moment, standing before a group of recruits in the shadow of a towering mech. "But they've never met anyone like us. They've never met you." In orbit, Admiral Carter oversaw the fleet's preparations with the precision of a chess master. He moved ships into position, anticipating the Council's strategies and countering them before they even began. His flagship, the Vanguard, became a symbol of humanity's resolve. A behemoth bristling with weapons, its hull painted with the motto, "We stand together." Meanwhile, in the subterranean labs beneath the Andes, Dr. Lane and his team worked tirelessly on Project Valkyrie. The weapon was a marvel of human ingenuity, a hybrid of artificial intelligence and advanced energy systems capable of turning the tide of battle. But with each breakthrough came new challenges, and Lane often found himself staring at his data long into the night, the glow of his monitors casting shadows across his face. It was during one of these late nights that Drayton visited the lab. Lane barely noticed him at first, too absorbed in his work. When he finally looked up, he found Drayton watching him with an intensity that bordered on admiration. "Burning the midnight oil again, Victor?" Drayton asked, his tone lighter than usual. Lane pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You know me. I don't sleep when there's work to be done." Drayton stepped closer, his gaze shifting to the holographic schematics of Valkyrie hovering above the central console. "Will it work?" Lane hesitated, his confidence faltering for the briefest of moments. "It has to." Drayton placed a hand on Lane's shoulder, his grip firm yet reassuring. "It will. I trust you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Lane nodded, the weight of Drayton's trust settling on him like a mantle. "I won't let you down." "I know," Drayton said, turning to leave. "None of US will." As the days turned to weeks, the tension mounted. Reports filtered in of the Council's fleet advancing, their ships blotting out the stars and systems they passed. Yet humanity didn't falter. They pressed on, each individual contributing in their own way, their collective efforts forming a bulwark against the storm to come. When the preparations were finally complete, Drayton called a final meeting of his top leaders. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation and the faintest glimmer of hope. As he stood before them, his voice carried the weight of a man who understood both the enormity of the task ahead and the strength of those who would face it. "They're coming," he said simply, "and they think they've already won. But they're wrong. They don't understand what it means to be human. They don't understand that when we're pushed to the brink, we don't break, we fight. And we win. The room erupted in a chorus of determination, each leader voicing their agreement. Drayton allowed himself a rare moment of pride, knowing that whatever happened next, humanity would meet it head-on. As the fleet mobilized and the final plans were set into motion, Drayton stood on the bridge of the Eaglet, staring out at the stars. He knew the battle ahead would be unlike anything humanity had ever faced. But he also knew this. The Galactic Council had underestimated them, and that would be their undoing. The void of space around Earth was alive with tension, a dark canvas soon to be painted with the fury of war. Humanity's fleet floated in formation, hundreds of ships glinting under the faint light of Sol. The flagship Eaglet held its position at the heart of the armada, its reinforced hull bristling with weaponry, ready for the coming storm. On its bridge, Commander Ronald Drayton stood at the center of controlled chaos, the murmur of officers and the hum of holographic displays forming a backdrop to his unshakable focus. "Report," he said, his voice sharp and steady. Admiral Theo Carter, his silver hair catching the light from a nearby console, stepped forward. "The Council's fleet has breached the outer markers. Estimate 3 minutes until visual contact." Drayton nodded, his gaze fixed on the tactical display before him. The enemy fleet was an ominous red mass, vast and unrelenting, advancing toward Earth like a tide of doom. Hundreds of ships, ranging from sleek frigates to massive dreadnoughts, dwarfed the human forces in both size and number. The odds were clear, but Drayton didn't flinch. "Send the signal to all ships," he ordered. "This is it. No retreat, no surrender." The command was relayed instantly, spreading through the fleet like a spark igniting dry tinder. Across dozens of vessels, crews braced themselves, knowing that history would remember this moment. They weren't just defending Earth. They were defending humanity's right to exist. General Ivan Reyes stood on the surface of the moon, overseeing the massive ground-to-space cannons hidden beneath retractable domes. His comlink buzzed to life as Drayton's voice came through. "They'll target the moon first," Drayton said. "Those cannons are a threat they can't ignore. Hold the line, Reyes." Reyes grinned, his scarred face reflecting the fiery determination that had carried him through countless battles. "Let them come," he replied. "We've got a surprise or two for them." Back aboard the Eaglet, the first glimpses of the Council's fleet appeared on the main screen. Ships materialized from hyperspace, their sleek designs glowing faintly with alien energy. The flagship of the alien armada loomed at the center, a monstrous vessel twice the size of the largest human dreadnought. It was a fortress in space, its hull adorned with pulsating lights and spiked protrusions that seemed to sneer at the human fleet. Drayton's jaw tightened as he addressed the bridge. "Admiral Carter, initiate Phase 1. Let's see how they handle human ingenuity." Carter nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Aye, Commander." The first wave of human ships surged forward, smaller frigates and corvettes darting ahead like predators circling a much larger prey. They weaved through the void with uncanny precision, their unpredictable movements designed to disorient the enemy. Plasma cannons fired in synchronized bursts, lighting up the darkness with streams of burning energy. The Council's fleet responded with brutal efficiency, their larger ships unleashing devastating salvos of energy beams and missile swarms. The first human losses were immediate, ships disintegrating under the overwhelming firepower. But the rest of the fleet pressed on undeterred. In the midst of the chaos, Drayton kept his voice calm and controlled. "Phase 2. Divert the vanguard to flank their center. Draw their fire away from our primary line." The vanguard, Admiral Carter's flagship, roared into motion, its engines blazing as it veered toward the heart of the enemy formation. Carter's voice came through the comms, crisp and unwavering. "We'll take the heat. Just make sure it's worth it." The enemy fleet shifted focus, turning their firepower on the vanguard. The massive human ship endured the onslaught, its reinforced shields flickering but holding. In the chaos, Smaller human vessels exploited the distraction, weaving through the gaps in the alien formation to strike at vulnerable points. On the moon, Reyes watched as the cannons roared to life, hurling massive projectiles into space. The alien dreadnoughts were forced to adjust their formations, their shields absorbing the impacts but straining under the relentless barrage. Reyes allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction before barking orders to his men. Reload and fire again. Keep the pressure on them. As the battle raged, the Eaglet remained at the rear, coordinating the chaos with surgical precision. Dr. Victor Lane stood beside Drayton, his normally composed demeanor replaced by a nervous energy. "Ronald," Lane said, his voice tight, "Valkyrie is ready, but this is cutting it close. If we deploy too soon—" "We won't," Drayton interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Not until it's absolutely necessary." Lane nodded, though his worry remained evident. Minutes stretched into hours as the battle ebbed and flowed, each side trading devastating blows. Human losses mounted, but so too did their victories. Smaller alien vessels fell to the relentless ingenuity of human tactics, while the Council's fleet remained frustrated by the unconventional strategies that defied their expectations. Then the turning point came. The alien flagship, previously a silent observer, unleashed its full might. A massive energy wave rippled outward, tearing through the human fleet like a scythe through wheat. Dozens of ships were obliterated in an instant, and for a moment, it seemed as though the battle was lost. Drayton's voice cut through the despair like a whip. "All units, fall back to designated positions. Hold the line." Reyes's voice crackled through the comms, filled with urgency. "Ronald, if you're holding anything back, now's the time to use it." Drayton turned to Lane, his expression hard. "Activate Valkyrie." Lane hesitated only a fraction of a second before nodding. He tapped a series of commands into his console, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. "Valkyrie online," he said. From hidden bays across Earth and its orbital platforms, sleek, unmanned drones launched into the void. They moved with a fluidity and precision that no human pilot could match, their AI systems linked to a central command housed deep beneath the Andes. The Valkyrie fleet was humanity's secret weapon, a swarm of autonomous fighters designed to outmaneuver and outthink the enemy. The drones entered the fray with ruthless efficiency, targeting critical systems on the alien ships with pinpoint accuracy. Engines failed, shields collapsed, and weapons fell silent as the Valkyrie fleet tore through the Council's forces like a swarm of wasps. The alien flagship turned its attention to the drones, but it was too late. The combined efforts of the Valkyrie fleet and the surviving human ships overwhelmed the alien armada, forcing them into retreat. On the Eaglet, the bridge erupted into cheers as the enemy ships began to withdraw. Drayton allowed himself a rare moment of relief, but his expression remained serious. "We've won the battle," he said, his voice cutting through the celebration. "But the war is far from over." Carter, battered but alive, appeared on the comm screen. "They won't make the same mistake twice, Ronald. They'll come back stronger." "I know," Drayton replied, "but so will we." As the human fleet regrouped and the moon's cannons fell silent, Drayton stood at the viewport, watching the remnants of the alien armada vanish into the void. Victory had come at a great cost, but humanity had proven one thing beyond doubt. They would not go quietly. The aftermath of the Battle of Seoul had left humanity scarred but eaglet. Debris fields stretched across the blackness of space, silent memorials to the countless lives lost in the fight for survival. Yet among the ruins, a sense of triumph prevailed. Against impossible odds, humanity had stood its ground. Now, it was time to send a reply to the Galactic Council, a message that would echo across the stars. Commander Ronald Drayton stood on the bridge of the Eaglet, staring out at the remains of the battlefield. The distant sun cast faint rays over the wreckage, highlighting the shattered hulks of ships that had once carried the hopes of countless alien civilizations. But there was no time to dwell on the price of victory. The Council would regroup, Their retaliation would be swift and merciless. Humanity had to act first. Admiral Theo Carter stepped forward, his uniform scorched and tattered from the battle, but his eyes still sharp. "They're wounded, Ronald," he said, his voice low but firm. "But they're not beaten. If we wait, they'll come back with everything they've got." Drayton nodded. "I know. That's why we're not giving them the chance." Dr. Victor Lane entered the bridge, his usually calm demeanor replaced with an air of urgency. "The Valkyrie fleet sustained minimal losses," he reported. "We've already begun repairing and rearming. If we deploy them now, they can hit the Council's forward command stations before they even realize what's happening." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we take the fight to them?" Drayton turned to face them both, his jaw set. "That's exactly what I'm suggesting. They expected us to crumble, to beg for mercy. Instead, we stood and fought. Now, we show them what it means to be human. We don't just survive. We rise." The bridge fell silent for a moment, the weight of Drayton's words settling over the crew like a mantle. Then Carter gave a slow, approving nod. "If we're doing this, we do it right. Strike hard, strike fast, and make sure they never underestimate us again." Reyes's voice crackled through the comm system, broadcasting from his command center on Earth. "I like the sound of that," he growled. "They wanted a fight. Let's show them we're not afraid to bring it to their doorstep." Preparations began immediately, across Earth and its colonies. Humanity mobilized for its first offensive. Shipyards churned out reinforcements, while engineers worked tirelessly to upgrade existing vessels with technology salvaged from the battlefield. Scientists like Lane pushed the limits of what was possible, enhancing the Valkyrie drones with even more advanced algorithms and weaponry. Every effort was focused on one goal: striking at the heart of the Galactic Council. The fleet gathered in orbit above Earth, a vast array of ships that glinted like stars against the darkness. Drayton stood in the Eaglet's war room, surrounded by his closest advisors. Holographic displays projected the layout of the Council's nearest command station, a heavily fortified structure orbiting a gas giant in a distant system. It was their primary hub in this sector, coordinating fleet movements and serving as the linchpin of their operations. Drayton gestured to the display. "This is our target. It's heavily defended, but if we take it out, we'll cripple their ability to mount an immediate counterattack." Lane leaned over the table, his brow furrowed. "We'll need precision strikes. If we can overload their command systems, we might be able to shut them down entirely. But it's a gamble. Their tech is beyond anything we've faced before." Carter chuckled dryly. "When has that ever stopped us?" Reyes's voice came through the comms again, filled with the familiar grit of a man who thrived under pressure. "I'll handle the ground forces. Once you punch through their defenses, my teams will land and finish the job. No command station, no command." Drayton nodded, his gaze sweeping across the room. "This isn't just about striking back. This is about sending a message. They thought we were weak. They thought we'd fall in line like every other species they've subjugated. Let's prove them wrong." The fleet departed in silence, each ship carrying thousands of souls who knew the weight of their mission. As they emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Council's territory, the command station loomed ahead, a massive construct of alien design. Its surface bristled with weapons and shield generators, a fortress seemingly impenetrable. Drayton's voice echoed across the fleet's comms. "All ships, this is Commander Drayton. You know what's at stake. You've seen what they've done, what they're capable of, but you've also seen what we can do. Together, we stopped them once. Now, we show them that humanity doesn't just survive. We fight, and we win." The first wave of human ships surged forward, their weapons lighting up the void as they engaged the station's defenses. Alien ships poured out to meet them, a swirling melee of plasma and fire that threatened to consume everything. The Eaglet held back, directing the battle with calculated precision, while the Valkyrie drones weaved through the chaos, their AI systems adapting to the enemy's tactics in real time. On the station's surface, Reyes and his ground forces breached the outer hull, engaging alien defenders in brutal close-quarters combat. The general led from the front, his massive frame cutting through the enemy lines like a battering ram. "Push forward," he roared, his voice carrying over the din of battle. "We didn't come this far to stop now." Inside the station, Lane worked furiously to hack into the alien command systems, his portable console a blur of holographic data. "I need more time," he shouted, sweat dripping down his face. "Their firewalls are unbelievable. It's like they're alive." Reyes grunted as he slammed an alien soldier into the wall. "Then work faster. We're running out of ammo." And men above. In the chaos of the fleet battle, the Eaglet took a direct hit, its shields flickering. Drayton gripped the edge of his console as the ship shuddered. "Status report." Carter, his voice calm despite the alarms blaring around him, responded immediately. "We've lost secondary shields, but we're holding. The drones are making progress. If Lane can take out their central systems." "I'm working on it." Lane snapped through the comms, his fingers flying over the console. Then, suddenly, his eyes widened. "I've got it. Their systems are linked through a central AI core. If I overload it—" "Do it," Drayton ordered. Lane tapped a final command, and across the station, lights flickered as the alien systems began to fail. The Valkyrie drones capitalized on the confusion, targeting critical points with devastating accuracy. One by one, the alien ships and defenses fell silent, their power drained by the cascading failures. On the station, Reyes and his men pushed into the command center, finding it abandoned. He activated his comlink. "Drayton, we've secured the station. It's over." The fleet cheered, a sound of triumph that reverberated through the void. Drayton allowed himself a rare smile, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "It's not over," he said, his voice steady. "But it's a start." As the fleet regrouped, humanity's message was clear. They would not bow. They would not break. And if the Galactic Council thought otherwise, they had just learned the price of their arrogance.